Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining. Today's workforce webinar is titled A Therapist Joins the Conversation: Why Coaching with Care Matters More Today Than Ever. My name is Jess Ray, and I have the pleasure of meeting with our clients and our network on a daily basis to talk about some of the challenges that they're faced with in the workplace when it comes to culture, bridging generational gaps, burnout. And so I'm so excited to be here with you guys today. If this is your first webinar, we welcome you. For 13 years, our anniversary is just next month. Magnet Culture has been helping cultures thrive by supporting organizations to create places where people want to work. Today, you'll hear conversations between Elena Thomas, who designs our Magnet Culture programs and also delivers them from coast to coast, and Brittany Johnson. Welcome, Brittany, a key contributor um, to our new course, Leading the Whole Person: How to Coach with Care. We actually built this class because our clients had been coming to us and saying, our staff comes in on a Monday and it's been a long weekend, and they're saying things like, my boyfriend is a hot mess. I don't know what to do with him. Or things that are more serious, like my pet passed away. And the managers are saying, I'm sorry, but can you just get back to work? Because they just are not equipped on how to handle those kinds of conversations. So after we started hearing all of this from our clients, we were like, hey, we need to tap into our resources here. So we'd like to introduce you to Brittany Johnson. She is a licensed mental health counselor, trauma consultant, and EMDR approved trainer who helps high performing professionals and teams overcome self sabotage, reduce anxiety, and thrive without burning out. With expertise in EMDR, somatic processing, and parts work, Brittany brings a trauma informed, performance aware approach to leadership, to communication, and emotional resilience. She partners with organizations to deliver impactful trainings that reduce burnout, improve psychological safety, and elevate team performance from the inside out. Welcome, Brittany. We are so very glad that you are here.
Thank you for
Remember,
having me.
of course, absolutely. I can't wait to get the conversation started. For those who have joined us, remember all of our webinars are recorded and available on our website. I'll put that in the chat here. It's important that, hey, if you've got people after this webinar who need to hear this message, forward that on to them. You can also check out this year's past webinars and subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can be notified when new webinars are available. And we'll send that link to you in just a few days. So you'll get an email, and it'll also land on our YouTube page as well. When questions come to mind, down at the bottom is a little Q&A box. So you can find that, click on it, and start throwing questions in there. I'll be engaging with you all in the chat as well, and we can answer those at the end. Be sure to stay for the entire session. We have a really cool deal that we're offering and a brand new networking group that I'm so stoked to share with you all. So, Elena, over to you.
Yay! Thanks for that awesome intro, Jess. So, y'all, as Jess mentioned, we built this class called Leading the Whole Person: How to Coach with Care, because the workforce today is bringing their whole selves to work. And that is the workforce of all ages, right? We have seen a shift from prioritizing work before self for a long time to now more of that shift to prioritizing self before work. But that's not really what works for employers and for us, right? And especially for managers, if anyone here is wearing that formal leader hat, this is another thing in your everyday work that you probably don't have time for. But instead of trying to, I don't know, instead of trying to tell someone, hey, leave that at the door, that's not going to help our retention issue that we have. But we want to keep people, we want them to want to work here. So that's the reason for the class and the conversation. We're not just going to talk about the class today. I want you to get to hear from Brittany on some of her insights as well. So that's what we're tackling today. I know a lot of folks that are on here and that we work with are in the greater senior care or healthcare space. And whether you are in this space or not, I think this recent report that I read would apply to you too. So McKnight's posted a survey or sorry, a report that 65% of nurses said that they were burnt out. And I have heard that word probably for the last 5 years as like the word of the year, and maybe now it's circled back. But I see this all the time. So just what we're talking about matters. We haven't just made this up. You're not alone. People are saying, I have a lot going on at work already, a lot going on at home, and they're bringing that into the workplace. And last thing that I'll say is whether you are a leader or not, great leaders, formal or informal, are now compassionate coaches who validate and listen and then provide the appropriate flexibility so that teams can do their jobs. That's the ultimate goal, is that we can help get our folks back to work, doing work well, and that they feel supported in the process. So Brittany, my first question for you is, when a team member shares personal struggles, what's the difference between someone being supportive versus being a therapist? Because we're not all therapists and licensed like you are.
Right, definitely. So the first thing I always think about is like the obvious, right?
Mm,
So as a therapist, we go through years of school, right? You've got to get your bachelor's degree, you get your master's degree, you've got to do an internship while you're in your master's degree, and then there's a postgraduate internship, and then there's all these other things, all these hours, right? To then get the LMHC behind your name or LCSW behind your name. So the obvious part is that there's this educational piece that goes into being a therapist as opposed to being a leader. But more importantly, what people see when they're in person with someone, the difference is as a therapist, we are trained to have unconditional positive regard. That is not
mm,
realistic in a everyday work setting. You are not going to have unconditional positive regard for all of your employees and your fellow team members and whatnot. So that to me is one of the biggest differences, is
mm,
that you are not required as a leader to have unconditional positive regard, meaning you are allowed to also have feelings about what this person is saying. You are
mm,
allowed to also have, we don't want to be biased or have judgment, but we're human, right? So that happens. As a trained professional, that is one thing that is a skill we learn, that we get to foster and build over the years, is to not have any type of personal bias about the person in front of us.
mm,
It's like a clean slate, right? So that's one big thing that makes you be the difference between a therapist and a supervisor. The other part of it is, as a therapist, I see people once a week. As a supervisor,
mm.
you see them every day, right?
Great point.
So sometimes it's just important to keep that in mind of like, as your supervisor, I can hear what you're saying and I can have empathy. And keep in mind, empathy means I have an understanding. Empathy is not sympathy, right?
Mm,
Sympathy is when you feel sorry for someone, when you start to look at them and look at all the things that are working against them, right? Having empathy just means I understand you're having a rough day. I understand you're having a rough week. I understand you've had a rough weekend, yet still and here are the
mm,
ways that we can work together to move this needle to get back to why we're here, which is the production, right? Like we're
mm.
here to produce.
Yeah, that's so well said. And I love what you said about the level of education, because that really helps as well to understand. Like, some people, this is your entire career, is to know how
Yes.
to do this really well. So y'all, if
Yes.
Brittany says something that you go, oh gosh, I wish I said it that well. Okay, Brittany's a professional here. So
Yes.
I love that you've taught me some easy language that I can kind of use whenever, that sounds like me and
Right.
not like I'm super smart and I've got these letters after my name, which is one of my favorite
Right.
things. But
Yes.
okay, so can you help me with, what's the line, right? So someone comes, you see them every single day, and you've got
Mm-hmm.
an employee that comes up to you and they say all the things that Jess said earlier, right? They bring
Mm-hmm.
you something that to them is the biggest thing happening in their life. It's a crisis. It is something that you might not agree with it as a leader. Like, you might
Mm-hmm.
think they shouldn't be overwhelmed about this, but they are,
Mm-hmm.
right? So how do you draw the line of like talking about that versus getting back to work?
I like to keep things simple. As you just mentioned, like we've talked a few times about
Yeah.
like just things to say. So just a simple human statement, right? Remember,
Mm.
the person in front of you is a human, and you, as far as I know, are a human as well. So something just super simple as, I'm so sorry you experienced that. Is there anything I can do right now for you that will help you know that we are here? at the same time get us back to what we're doing here, right? Like sometimes depending on the person, you might even say something like, well, hopefully this you being at work today gives you a break from having to think about those things.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah, remind them that this is a space that actually, and it's not saying the phrase leave that at the door or any
Right.
sort of negative, that judgment, like you shouldn't be talking about that, but instead, hey, like, or maybe even help switch them over to, yeah, it sounds like there's a lot going on in your head right now. Is there a task that you could do that
Hmm.
just doesn't require as much of, I don't know if to say as much thinking, but as much of that headspace?
Yeah.
Could you do that for 5-10 minutes even could
Hmm.
help? I really like
And it
that.
also starts to help us get back on track with compartmentalizing. I think
Mm,
there's over the years we've seen to there's been like these shifts of like we used to compartmentalize everything. Then we moved to a
mm,
phase where we didn't want to compartmentalize anything. We wanted to feel and experience all of it. I think now using that type of language gives us a chance to find a happy medium of
mm,
being able to compartmentalize because there are some perks and pros to being able to say, you know what? At home, I've got all that stuff that I've got to deal with. But when I come here, I get to just thrive in my work because
mm,
most of our employees, most of the people are really good at their jobs, right? So being able to make that type of statement helps them to be able to compartmentalize and say, you know what? I do have all that going on at home. But when I get here, I get to go back to being the superstar Brittany that's really good at her job. And I get to, I don't want to use the word avoid, but I get to put that to the side for just a little while.
mm. I love that. Yeah. So all the things that you're saying, I know you've helped us kind of weave into this class. So I just want to show y'all, some people have said, hey, I want to see more slides. So I want to show you guys some slides. So in this class, I just want to say, one of the things that we teach, and this is for all of you to take home with you today, your role as a supervisor and not a therapist is to prepare for the job related conversations, right? So one, it's preparing, and we know that we can't prepare for every single thing that is going to come out of our team members' mouths, right? And I know that I have brought plenty of things to work that I learned, oh, we don't talk about that here. And so I'm the one that it was almost like a gotcha to my boss, right?
Yeah.
And I love what you said about empathy as understanding. So we're
Mhm.
trying to do this balance of seeking to understand, because when you understand, then you can actually help guide them and support them. But then
Yes.
also balancing that with the accountability of what needs to get done, what has this person already committed to do, what's part of their actual job, and then
Mhm.
finding the balance. So you see them every single day. Some days you're going to be like, you had a great day this morning, leader, and you came in and in your car on the way to work, you were like, I'm going to be this supportive, awesome leader today. Great. That day you won with some empathy. And the next day you might be like, no one on my team knows how to do their
Yeah.
job. And you might lean more into accountability. And both of those things are good and fine. And again, it's just finding that balance.
Yes.
Um, One of the things that we have to do, we keep talking about the shift and the evolution. So if we say, no, I'm not going to adapt, I'm not going to adjust, then the problem is we could keep losing people who really
Mhm.
are asking that of their workplace, of their leader. So we might need to be the coaches to help someone do that compartmentalizing or use some other skills so that they can get refocused.
And I
Um,
think just to add for a second, when to speak to the leader who does say, I'm not doing that shift. I'm not doing that.
mhm,
My question to you is to sit with yourself, however, whenever you do it, what is the harm in being
mhm,
human? Because
mm,
what we're asking is essentially just to be person to person. We're not asking you to do anything outside of that. So my question to you in your alone time would be, what is the harm in me doing that? What is the harm in me saying, how was your day? How was your weekend? How are things as opposed to just strictly being about get these numbers done.
yeah. I know that the first time that someone asked me at work, "How are you?" I
Hmm.
thought they meant it. I didn't realize that when the way that we do things at work is when you say, "How are you?" You're supposed to say, "Fine, thanks.
Yes,
How are you?"
right? Yeah.
So you also, leader, might be thinking, like, well, I stopped asking that question because now I'm getting more of an answer. But again, what's the harm in that? Now you might learn that someone is stressed about something happening at work that is actually a barrier that you as a leader can help overcome,
Yes.
which is really helpful,
Yes.
and not harmful to the work that
Right.
we're doing, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Or just simply say, how are you in relation to work? How are you today in relation to work? If you're
oh,
worried
I
about that.
like that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the harm in that?
Yeah. Um, one thing that I hear, so in this shift, I do think that societally there has been more of a maybe awareness and acknowledgement that we are human.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that is really uncomfortable for some people. And some leaders just want to do their job. But what we're
Mm-hmm.
saying is actually this relates to you doing your job well. So
Yes.
you introduced me, Brittany, to this phrase trauma informed leadership.
Mm-hmm.
How would that's a big word. Like trauma is a
Yes.
word that we don't talk about at work. So
Right.
help me and help others understand what that means and how maybe it's not as scary as I think it is.
Yeah. So when I say trauma informed leader, there are levels to it, right? So we could be talking about the person who has taken their own separate online courses to learn about what is a trauma informed way to live life, or what is a trauma informed way to approach. That's one level. All the way down to trauma informed just means you recognize that the person sitting on the other side of you or in front of you or what have you has experienced some things in life that have shaped the way they view the world, the way they interact with the world, the way they get their job done. So being a trauma informed leader means just that. I can understand that you, Elena, have experienced some things in life and that has shaped the way that you interact with the world. No, that doesn't mean I'm going to ask you to tell me what happened on your fifth birthday when the cake fell off the table and your mom yelled. We're not asking those questions. We are just saying that maybe because the cake fell and your mom yelled, now you are startled easily by loud noises or when people come up behind you and touch you and tap you on the shoulder. Maybe that is something that causes you to get distracted and unable to produce at work, right? So when I think about trauma informed leadership, you're thinking about what are the experience someone has had that has led them to be where they are today, and how can I use that information to not make excuses or make concessions, but just be able to say, okay, I am not going to tap Elena on her left shoulder because that means she loses an hour of productivity.
Yeah, you don't have to know where that comes from for me. And
No.
I don't even have to know where that comes from for
Right.
me in the workplace, but
Right.
acknowledging, when um something that I think can stress me out at work is different than something that stresses someone else out at work. And so it's
Yes.
just learning how to adapt.
And you do it as a team level. You don't have to necessarily do it as an individual. So you can
Yeah.
just say, as a team, we are going to operate from the standpoint that when we all walk into this building and we start our shift, that we have all already done whatever skills we needed to regulate ourselves. And we are all here for the simple mission and purpose of our team.
Mm, yeah. And maybe to go one step back, so one thing that I've heard is trauma informed care. Again, this was a little bit more for those of you in the senior care or healthcare space. That really grew as a phrase that we use and a way that we approach caring for our patients or our residents.
Yes.
Trauma informed leadership is taking that same thing and applying it. Um, you gave me a really good definition for trauma that didn't scare me. How do you define that, Brittany, just in case someone wants to know?
Yeah, I think I'm sure I use my go-to, which is trauma is anything that is too much, too little, for too long, without, I think I may have said the word balance, or I normally say attunement, depending on who I'm talking
Yeah.
to. So balance or attunement or attachment relationships. So that can be anything, right? Trauma, when you think about it in that definition, it can be anything that a person has experienced too much of or too little of for too long without balance.
Hmm. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate
Mhm.
that. So y'all, that's the it's too much or too little for too long. And to me, I was able to say, that's why I used the word stress earlier. That sounds
Mhm.
to me like what I understand to be stress. So
Yes.
listen, in this, right, you pick and choose, leader, the language that you're the most comfortable with to help you understand. Um,
Mhm.
and we're not trying to teach you in any of this how to be a therapist, but how to use
No.
some of those tips and tricks that someone has spent a very long time learning and trying to give you a shortcut for that. Um,
And one of the things that I actually pride myself on, if I'm being honest, is being able to take those hard concepts that I learned in graduate school in the last 15 plus years of experience to make it easier and digestible for everyday people, because it
mm,
really is just talking about what we all experience. There's just
yeah,
different labels for it.
yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, so some people are skilled, they're comfortable. I just kind of addressed that. What about the leaders who aren't? So I want to just share with you all, and then Brittany, I'll ask you a question. When I was in one of my past roles before Magnet, I worked for an organization that started to see this rise and this concern in employee surveys and employee conversations where people were saying, I just have so much going on. It's really hard for me to focus at work. I am burnt out. My mental health is poor. People were even sharing things like, I have a lot of anxiety, right? Language that wasn't as typical in the workplace. And the leaders shared with HRs on the HR team. They said, we need resources. I can't do this on top of everything else. And so where I had the chance to work with our training and development team to build our first ever mental health training for leaders. That was awesome. I think it was the best project priority initiative for that organization, and they're still using it. But not all of us have the resources to create that. And so that's part of why we created this, but that's also part of why we just like to share resources as we can. I mean, already even just sitting through a conversation like this with me and Brittany, I walk away and I go, oh, that's something that I can do differently. So it's okay if you don't have the resources to build this, or if you don't know where to get started. I'd love to share one more slide with you guys, and I do apologize on I had it all set up, and you guys know how technology works, right? So I just want to tell you that we don't always have the answers, and I think that's really important for any of us to acknowledge, but do we have the right questions? And one of the problems that is coming up that's tying back to work is when people are calling out. They're saying, hey, I just can't today. And we all have our own view of, you try to convince them to come to work. When's that appropriate? Is it okay for someone to text? Or are you expecting them to call you so you can hear on the phone, right? And so this was a conversation that we had in the class, was to ask, what do you all think? Because there might be a policy or practice that someone uses at work that actually gives clarity both to the leader and employee. Sometimes I like to think of policy as it should be supporting the work that the leader does. So I know I usually have a lot of HR folks here. If you are HR or you're a policy maker, I encourage you to have a conversation like this with your team. So what are the issues that we're currently facing? What clarity do you need from us? And what resources might we need to then provide to employees? So are there any other questions, Brittany, that you think would be really helpful for decision makers to be asking, or leaders to be asking, just to get the conversation going on how we can support our people better?
Yeah, so I'm gonna stick to my lane, which is the mental health lane,
I love it.
right?
That's great.
Because I have lots of ideas, but as my cousin who is an HR professional reminds me often, that's not legal. So I'm gonna stick to what I know, which is
I
the
love
mental
that.
health
That's great.
part. And I'm going to say that that's where I would encourage leaders, just like this class that we developed and that you developed. I just consulted with you, but you
I
created this
appreciate it.
beautiful class. Like just
Thanks.
like this class you created, and just like other classes, I'm gonna age myself a little bit, but professionals on here probably I did years of corporate work before I became a therapist. And so we used to have to take these classes about having difficult conversations and having conflict resolution like conversations. Like I won't name the company, but there was a company that was very popular for teaching companies across the United States all of these different techniques, right? So I think leaders can learn these skills. But I would say that I would encourage a leader, that's where that trauma informed comes in, and you know your people. You have built some type of relationship where you know the person that's calling in, and you can be able to judge based on that person on an individual basis. Do I need to nudge them to try to come in, or do I just need to go ahead and document this and then let the chips fall where they may in terms of what happens on the HR side?
Yeah.
That's what I would say. That's my mental health side of it, is the trauma informed leader will be able to say, you know what, I know, I'm gonna make up a name here. I know Genevieve, because that's gonna be my name in whenever years. I was telling you that. I know Genevieve calls in every third Friday because I see the pattern now. This time I'm
Mm.
going to encourage her to see, like, hey, can you just come in for half the shift? Is there anything we can work on where we can get you to come in for a little bit of this shift? And if not, if the answer is no, then it's not personal. There's no hard feelings. I'm just going to document it and pass it on to HR.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I don't know a lot of Genevieves now. That's what you were saying is when you're older, you want to be a Genevieve because you don't know
I
any
want
older
to do.
Britneys. You know, you want to be an
Yes.
older Genevieve. Anyway, um, I lost my thought. Okay, it's back. Sorry, you know how that goes, y'all. So with the calling out piece, right? One thing, so let me take my HR. I'm gonna take your therapist, and then I'll give my HR perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Is it can be frustrating when we have a policy, especially a time and attendance policy, that let me say, and also scheduling, when someone on your team is constantly asking you to adjust because you are trying to be fair and consistent, um, and you say, well, we can't do that. But if you are constantly losing people because they are calling out or because they're coming in late or you're short staffed because someone is calling out an entire shift and honestly you would take them for half a shift, if you can say yes to any of those questions, I think it's worth the conversation among a team to say, where can we provide flexibility?
Yeah.
Right? So maybe it is that I don't know. So if I'm calling in, let me say Genevieve again. Let me give an example. So Genevieve's calling in, you know that she calls out every third Friday. And let's say up to this point, you say, hey, maybe she gave you the notice so that it's not a no call, no show, but now it is like a -1 point. I know some people do a point system.
Mm-hmm.
So the next time that Genevieve calls in, I'm going to say, hey, I hear you. Thanks for letting me know, because we do want to thank people for letting us know and not just leaving us,
Mm-hmm.
without any knowledge. But just so we can touch base, where you're at right now is we've had a couple, this is now the second time this happened or third time this has happened. So just so you know, if this happens again, I am going to have to move you to that next step. So it might be that now you have a written warning or the
Mm-hmm.
progressive side of this. I am not telling y'all to not do that, but that policy or the way that we do that doesn't mean that we suddenly have someone who's here and who's working. And so that's what Brittany's saying is there a way that we can find an in between and say, hey, can I ask a couple questions? Just say, is there any chance that, would you be able to come in an hour, an hour later? Would that help? Or how about I hear you, any chance you can come for the first part of your shift and then you let me know at that point if you need to go home. So it's a way that you can get more creative to meet the business need and also to show that support and care for your person. But
And I do want to say that doing that does not mean we are making excuses. Because when I'm hearing you talk, I immediately think about my yes, I am a trauma expert. It's what I've been doing for the better part of the last 20 years. But prior, I worked in corporate America, right? So
yeah.
corporate America is it is or it isn't.
Mm,
There's not a lot of gray. So I even think about even in those spaces of we still have to follow the policy, but maybe we start having a conversation about, does this policy need to change, or does this leader now need different skills to be able to manage? Because do we
mm.
have an issue where this leader is the reason that people aren't coming to work, but
Thank you
no
for
one's
saying
been
that.
able to
Yes.
bring that to the forefront? So i
Yeah.
think i think in that is keeping remember, trauma informed means I have an understanding of your experiences that have led to you being where you are today. It does not mean that we don't hold you accountable. It does not mean that you get passes to not do your job. It
Mm,
does, though, mean that we're going to look at things in a different way for everybody, not just one person, for
yeah.
everybody to see, do we need to do this in a different way?
Mm. Thank you for saying that, y'all. That's why Brittany's so awesome. You get it. And I really appreciate that. So what else, right? We can say maybe there's a policy shift that needs to happen. Maybe leaders need new skills and we can provide some training. But what else could leaders do to become more comfortable with some of these conversations?
I think this where my brain immediately goes back to this class you created. To me, is the start of that, right? And now that means that it might be an opportunity to have a series of classes that teaches the skill just to have difficult conversations through a trauma informed lens,
Mm,
or has conflict resolution skills through this trauma informed lens, because it
mm,
is important to have those kind of conversations,
yeah.
right? And for leaders to have those skills. I think it also means that we just, maybe the people watching, if you are a decision maker, maybe that does mean that you go back to the board with your team and you say, what are the things that are currently working and what are the things that we need to maybe adjust? And
Mm,
you give yourself and your employees compassion,
mm,
empathy, those words that used to mean soft and not work
mm,
related. Those words don't mean that anymore. Like they really have never meant that, but we need to shift the way
mm.
we view those words. But bringing some of those things into the place now.
Yeah. And I know that there are days that it is hard for me to focus at work,
Hmm.
right?
Yes.
I am doing the thing. I am trying to compartmentalize. I am trying to leave it at the door.
Hmm.
And we get halfway through the day and I've got a thought that comes up that pulls me out of focus. And so right now, in the way that I try to show up, I know it's not perfect every time, I am trying to keep that more to myself.
Hmm.
But that actually can lead to my team not knowing how to support me, right? So now,
Yeah.
if I start just keeping all of this in, I might get withdrawn or I might actually make more mistakes because I think that I'm doing things and I'm not. So some
Hmm.
of these questions that you ask can also help you figure out how to support each other as a team. Knowing that someone's going through something really hard outside of work, if they choose to share that, that is an opportunity for you as a team to decide, hey, maybe we give them a little bit of time in the morning as they're getting up and running because they are now in the role of caregiver for
Hmm.
their parent who's living at home as well as their kid. I think
Yes.
it's called the sandwich generation, right? That you're now
Yes.
doing both. And so again, it's just trying to say, oh yeah. And I don't know why, but I really think that that example, like a sandwich generation, that feels more acceptable
Hmm.
um, to support at work than someone who's going through like a high school breakup. But
Yes.
y'all, that each of these are new experiences for these people.
Hmm.
And this conversation that we're having with them is new for us too. So we
Yeah.
can't control those, but we can control how we show up and have some of those questions to really redirect people back to work to make us stronger.
That and, as you were talking, I was thinking it also can be a great opportunity for companies to just have a resource website that says, if you're
Yes.
sitting at your desk and you cannot compartmentalize, you cannot focus, you just can't do it, as opposed to saying, all right, I'm going home for the day. Here are 5 things you can try to do beforehand.
Mm,
Right. So here are some, and I know we talk about as with the course you built with this class, like you have some resources that you provide people who take the class. So take the class if you haven't already signed up, take the class.
mm,
But also just thinking about people listening, there are things that you can implement with your client, sorry, with your employees that does not involve you. It can
mm,
literally just be a website that is on the company's intraweb. It could be a handout that you all email and they can print it on their own that just says, here are 5 things you can do to reground yourself. Because
mm,
typically that's what someone needs. If somebody is distracted at work and they just can't compartmentalize, sometimes it's just as simple as doing a quick 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5 things you can see, 4 things you can take, touch, three. It's as simple as
yeah.
that. It's as simple as learning how to deep breathe because most of us, we breathe for survival, but we don't breathe to calm our systems down.
Mm,
So sometimes it's just those simple things that you can have available that doesn't even require you to be involved as the leader.
yeah. I was talking to a head of a dining room and of food, and she said that she's created this culture on her team of they come to her if they need a breath. So
Mm-hmm.
as a leader, I don't want to say her name in case she's here today, but she started during her pre-shift meetings with her team. So any of you that have team meetings or stand-ups, she started to say, hey, I know that right now we are going through a time that is stressful, like acknowledging that we've got a lot going on. So in order for us to provide the best customer service, it's important for us to not bring all of our stuff to the customer. So if you find yourself struggling to do that, come to me and we're going to do a breath together. You don't have to do this with your people. Again, just what Brittany said, it could be something that you don't do with them, but
Mm-hmm.
think about it. I'm in the middle of taking care of someone and something just an alarm bell goes off in my head. I'm not able to focus. Well, guess what? There is work that can be done that isn't customer facing that still
Yeah.
benefits the customer. So, in the case of, let's say you're in food service, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there stuff that could be done back of house that is not front of house that you could ask someone or you could help guide someone to go do something different while they do some of their, to kind of call themselves? Or do they just need a 5-minute break? Or do they just need that breath. And you might already have these skills yourself, but especially if you have a younger workforce, your younger workforce hasn't been in this situation before. They don't
Yeah.
know from previous experience how to maybe compartmentalize in the moment. And so it's something we can help them do.
And deep breathing is a go-to. Yes, I said the 5, 4, 3, 2, but honestly, the thing that I teach every person I meet, whether it is a individual client in therapy or a training or whatever meeting, we always start off with some type of regulating activity, right? Which is just breathing. So you can teach people to do breathing as they're just walking around during their jobs because we are already breathing. We're just not intentional breathing,
Mhm.
right? So, my favorite way is to just everybody, and not that I mean, you can do it right now because it works perfect, but everybody take a nice inhale. And then when you blow on the palm of your hand and just blow on your hand. And if it's warm,
Ooh.
you got a nice deep breath. Elaine, I saw you do it because your shoulders dropped, right? Like that
Ooh.
simple. That
Yeah.
that is a deep breath. Most people would say, "Yes, I'm breathing. I do it all. Of course I'm breathing. I'm alive, aren't I?" Right? So like when you teach someone just that simple skill that we just did, that didn't take anything but 10 seconds of your day
Mhm.
to show that.
Yeah. I love
That
that.
doesn't cost anything, right?
I love that.
And now you give them an opportunity to not have to go home because they can do that for 30 seconds if they need to, right? You can allow someone 30 seconds to be
Mm,
able to reground, regroup, and now they don't have to go home. Now
mm.
they can stay and finish their shift. Now they
Yeah.
don't have to worry about are they negatively impacting the rest of their team because they've been able to take a moment to just recenter.
Yeah. I love that. Any final thing that you could say, someone here, one thing that you've shared or not shared that leaders can do to shift how they're showing up to better support and be more compassionate and balance that empathy and accountability with their team
Yeah, I
members?
think my final thing I'll say is I think of the old saying that my mom and my aunts used to say when we were kids, which is you get more with honey than you do vinegar, right?
Mm,
You get more bees with honey than you do vinegar. And so I have used that same thought process, and I'm going to encourage all of you all to use that same thing to think about if I do something to produce more honey as opposed to vinegar, how what could I get for that? And what is it costing me to do that? And you
mm,
adapt it to your work setting. So in these spaces, if you are a leader in a senior care facility, what can I say to all of my people that is going to be honey producing,
mm,
which means they're going to come and they're going to want to work harder and do more and show up even if they are not feeling it,
mm,
versus if I say this thing such as I don't care, leave it at the door, or this is work, we don't have time for that because that's
mm,
vinegar, that's not honey,
mm.
right? If I say that, what's the harm in that? How can I implement and say something like that to everybody that I encounter to get more?
I love that. Thanks so much, Brittany.
Thank you.
Jess, I'm going to invite you back to help wrap us up and lead us in Q&A. So y'all, if you are thinking of questions, put them in the Q&A box.
Awesome job. That was like mind blowing for me. So, thank you all so much for the insights. I think that's so helpful. And I appreciate all the tips because when I talk to clients and they're like, what do we do? These are little nuggets that I can feed them. So, we have a lot to digest and think about. Like Elena said, if you have questions, put those in the Q&A box and we'll get to those here in just a moment. Brittany, before I get into my wrap up, I'd love to know how can folks get connected with you and
Yeah.
follow your work?
Awesome. I'm going to drop it in the chat, but my name is Brittany A. Johnson, and it is actually that's my name on every single platform that I am on is Brittany A. Johnson, and that's also my website. And so feel free to follow me on social media. Send me an email if you have questions or if you think that I could be beneficial to your company to help you all with some things. Like, yes, definitely reach out. And
Awesome.
thank you all
Thank you.
again. If I haven't said it enough already, let me say it one more time. Thank you guys for inviting me because I think this is such an important topic to help us as we move into the next phase of work and life with adults.